All right, welcome back to another episode of the Front Three with myself, Big Will, Coach Dan, and the prodigy himself, AJ. Again, AJ's on the subs bench. He can't be with us tonight, but again, he will be back very soon. But today you got myself and Coach. How you doing, Coach?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you for asking. I feel like I should be the host for this one because of
Maybe.
what we're about to discuss. Perhaps you should speak a bit more than I usually do.
It's impossible for me to be a bit neutral in this one, I think.
Exactly.
All right, so in this episode, we're actually going to preview this weekend's big North London derby between Arsenal and the current Premier League leaders, Tottenham Hotspur. So, to help us today is a former journalist for the Evening Standard, Football London, and now he's a soccer correspondent for CBS. It is the one and only James Benge. How you doing, James?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing very well. Looking forward to this big clash this Sunday. So let's start with by just looking at both teams and how they've done so far this season. Starting with Tottenham, first of all. I think for me, they've been very, very impressive this season and rightly sit at the top of the Premier League. What have you made of their season so far?
I mean, there's not much more to say than they've really been outstanding. I think the way they responded to that opening day setback against Everton, I didn't see coming. I think there's a buzz to the place. There's a sense of sort of relaxation as much as there's this, the stress of the title race will come at some stage because I think they'll still be in it. But I think right now they're just most of the players are happy, enjoying their football, playing a lot of football. There's strength in depth that is up there with any squad in Europe, just in terms of having options of similar quality to come off the bench. And they played brilliant football, and they've got the best front two in England in Son and Kane. I think that they feel like a really real team, as much as the only thing I'd say is Kane's, morphing into a number 10. The only reason he's got so many assists is Son is a brilliant finisher, but it's a feel good story unless you're an Arsenal fan.
Of course. This week you spoke to Ben Davies, I believe. Just tell us about that interview and some of the things he mentioned about Mourinho and then, of course, the development of Harry Kane as well.
And so, yeah, we did. We picked up on Kane because he's obviously one of the longest serving players. When Ben Davies arrived, Kane was really just breaking into the setup. So he's seen these different ages of Harry Kane. The young penalty box poacher, and then I guess he wouldn't say this, but the player who maybe looked like he was fading a little over the last few years. Just or maybe his game wasn't expanding in the way we thought it might. He was settling into being a goal scorer. The injuries were getting to him. At least that's what we thought. And even he was saying even he didn't really see this creative flourishing coming. He'd seen the evidence that it could be unlocked, as we all had kind of in flashes under Pochettino, but no one really thought, this will be the season Harry Kane develops into a number 10. I mean, he was saying, this all comes down to work rate, ethic, and what he does in his free time, what he does off the pitch, and that sets a perfect example for the rest of the squad. And I mean, I think he as well is one of those players that's so key in that squad harmony. We talked about the cricket and all that a bit, and I think those are always they're great signs that the squad feels so relaxed to play these games, for this stuff to be kind of posted on the internet, for some of them to look a bit stupid. I said Sergio Reguilon's bowling action is not one for the cricketing purists, but I think it shows there's such a great atmosphere around this squad. And when you've got players like Kane, he's a great leader by example, if nothing else. He sets the right expectations. People see the best player in the team working constantly to hone his craft, and it's inevitably everyone else starts following.
And it's interesting because if you look at Mourinho and some of the past clubs he's been at, he was always had like strained relationships, whether it's with Pogba, maybe Ronaldo, Ramos. With Kane, what's the relationship like, do you think, between the two?
Oh, they just get each other. Those two get each other. I mean, there are those strained. I think there have been those strained relationships at Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had Tanguy and Ndombele last season,
Yeah.
and what's kind of been quite cool is Mourinho has. I personally think it's mostly Mourinho has kind of swallowed his pride, acknowledged that sort of there's still things that Ndombele doesn't do that well, but focused on what Ndombele does do well, which is beat the press, make those brilliant passes. Obviously, now you have a little bit of an issue in the background with Dele Alli, but I think so. Maybe what you'd say is Mourinho's chosen the right targets, because I remember at Real Madrid, we all remember he went after Iker Casillas. That was basically like going after Real Madrid, the institution. It would be the same with Kane, but I think they're kindred spirits. They're both workers. They're both not the most showy of. They don't focus on showing off their repertoire. Kane is not someone that you expect to see doing tricks and flicks in much the same way that a Mourinho team is not one that kind of goes much beyond getting the basics very, very right. So I think there's a squad there that have really bought into Mourinho's message. I mean, this was something Moussa Sissoko said to us on CBS as well, where he was just like, this Spurs squad are like, we need to win a trophy. This is what really matters for this era at Tottenham. And for all his flaws, Mourinho is the consummate trophy winner.
Absolutely. And just on Mourinho, I mean, a few years ago, people were thinking he was past his best. He leaves Manchester United. He comes into Tottenham. Are you surprised how well he's done at Tottenham?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you said a few years ago, I thought at the start of the season he was past his best.
Especially after the first game, And
I think I'd probably tweeted as such. Is it? I mean, I'd be interested to see what you guys think as well. But I wonder if it's just that this is such an odd season where you there's not really any time for philosophies. There's not time to build game plans that you can tailor to your opposition. It's so relentless, and I think that's just an environment that suits Mourinho. I might be wrong, but it's probably the sort of circumstances where everyone's backs are against the wall that Mourinho probably secretly enjoys.
Definitely. Coach, what do you make of Tottenham this season? Have you been impressed with them? And then secondly, your thoughts on Jose Mourinho?
I'll start with sort of like where James ended off. I think I would like to agree with him in the sense that I think Jose Mourinho works best when the atmosphere around him or in the league is a bit chaotic. I feel like that's when he works best, and everything seems to be going to plan for him with the structure of how the league is now, off the back of COVID and everything like that. He's the best when it comes to working within anything chaotic, and he's a contributor of that as well, with sort of like some of the comments he will make just to rile you up and stuff like that. So listen, he couldn't have the stage set any better for him this season. And guys, only what would that, like, it would have to take someone that really, really either don't understand football or hates Mourinho or Tottenham to say they're not doing amazing. They clearly are. They're doing excellent. I think one thing with Mourinho, and you guys mentioned, people thought he's past his best. One thing with him, right, whether you like him or not, he's one of those managers. He knows what works for him. He knows what he wants, and when he comes in, you can't provide that. He's going to complain like a little baby till he gets it. And if he doesn't, you're going to sack him very soon. He's just that kind of individual. And I think this season, he said to himself, he feels like he's got more options available to him. And he needed the time to have got that. Thankful, I can't even get my words right. thanks to whatever, yeah. He seems to have got in a quicker time that, some managers would have and everything like that. And, I heard James say, what was it, Ben Davies? He says, or was it Sissoko, sorry, saying this Tottenham team wants to win a trophy and stuff like that. And I was thinking, yeah, well, you should have done that when your other manager was here, because I thought that guy was brilliant to those players, honestly. So when I hear stuff like that, not that they didn't want to, but they should have put everything in there when they had him to have won the trophy. But it will be interesting to see how things unfold. Listen, City are suffering, so are Liverpool. And, you know, with all that said, we all know sort of like the quality those teams have. If, you know, they can do one or two businesses in January, they could be back into this. So I wouldn't, you know, tip them for the trophy just yet.
James, do you see Tottenham as genuine title contenders? If so, why? And if not, what could hold them back?
So I think if you're doing sort of tiers, I still think that Liverpool are the favourites. It's every injury makes me doubt it a bit more. And I feel like with Liverpool, every time they have another injury, it just kind of lowers the floor that they could hit. I think, you know, a full strength Liverpool squad, with where City are at this season, are so much better than every team in the country. But they don't have that full strength squad, and they won't for a lot of this season.
Yeah.
So that floor's a bit lower, but their ceiling is still much higher. So they're still my favourites until things start going wrong. After that, I think you have Chelsea just a little bit ahead of Spurs. Chelsea's, I mean, they both have the same advantage that they've got depth.
Yeah.
But Chelsea have maybe
a bit more.
Their best is a little bit better. You know, they're Kante, Silva, Mendy, Giroud.
Yeah.
I'm joking. But maybe not. But with Spurs, they have a lot of depth, except if anything were to happen to Kane or Son, you'd worry. I think they can cope without Alderweireld for a while, but I'm not crazy about that centre-back pairing. Having said all that, they're just a really efficient winning machine. So I think if things go wrong with Liverpool, you have to say that Chelsea and Spurs are the ones that will profit. That's not a very good answer, but at least it means I don't have to say that Spurs are title favourites or anything. They're just a level below.
It hurts, doesn't it? It hurts. Moving on to Arsenal then. I'm just confused as an Arsenal fan. I don't know what's happening at the moment. Can you explain?
It's a process.
Yeah.
I would remind every Arsenal fan that it was less than a month ago that Arsenal went to Old Trafford, and admittedly, Man United were bad, but they still went to Old Trafford and won pretty convincingly, played this team off the park and deserved much more than a 1-0 win. It's only 3-4, well, actually, maybe it's a bit more than 4 months, though, since Arsenal won the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, talking to people at Arsenal about this, the FA Cup raised everyone's expectations about what Mikel Arteta could achieve and how quickly he could achieve it. And so did some of the new signings. But Gabriel arrives, and he's fantastic, but you still don't have a good centre-back to partner him, would be my opinion.
Yeah.
Luis has his games, but Luis is old and slow and still liable to do pretty dumb things.
Yeah.
Thomas Partey arrives, and I think he's going to be great. I think we've already seen signs he's pretty good. But the rest of that midfield is, I would say it's a bottom half to bottom third of the Premier League midfield. Xhaka and Ceballos and Elneny, you know, if Arsenal were to put them on the market, I don't know who'd be hammering down their door for them. And, you know, the same up front. I still believe that there's a good player in Alex Lacazette, but I question whether Lacazette believes that. So the squad is really imbalanced, and it's been put together by 4 different people. You know, Arteta, Wenger, Emery, Sagnier, Mislintat, all these people have had a hand in this squad. And that's why you ended up with Arteta arriving in December to find he had no left-footed centre-backs. I think that Arsenal fans have probably begun to relish the turbulence secretly, and that's why you have people coming out with some pretty bizarre. I hear people wanting Arteta gone. It's bizarre. It's wrong. I mean, you know, it's a game of opinions, but that doesn't mean that some opinions aren't completely wrong. And Arsenal have absolutely zero appetite. The only way they would really consider letting him go is if the reality of keeping him there was they might go into the Championship, and that's not going to happen. No. This team is just having a little bit of a slump, and they've got things that need to be improved. They need more creativity in midfield. They need a better balance in the forward areas. They need another centre back. Time is it's a really tough commodity, and it's not one that any manager's really afforded. But there is no great plan B out there. There's no way there's no one you could hand this squad over to who would immediately turn it into a guaranteed top 4 team. I think they'll come back to contend for top 4, although I think it may well have kind of just slipped out of their grasp now. But it's he's getting what can be got out of this squad. It's not great. It's pretty ordinary, and that's probably my rant over there.
Just on Arteta, this week he came out and said, the game against Wolves, they put in about 30-something crosses in. He's saying, it's only a matter of time before, something goes in. But do you think he's somewhat clutching at straws when he starts making those sorts of arguments?
So the impression I got when he was saying that, I know that ends up getting sort of put through the David Moyes filter, doesn't it? Of if we put in all these crosses, but that's not the game plan. The game plan isn't to lob loads of balls into the box. Obviously, and also there's crosses and there's crosses. If Nelson or Tierney or Pepe get to the byline and cut it back, that's a cross. But it's a cross that's better suited for Aubameyang than kind of lobbing one in from level with the 18-yard box.
Yeah.
It was, it was clumsily phrased, but I don't really. I've every indication I've had from Arsenal is that they don't really want to play the way they're playing now. I think Arteta also said in the week he's looking at putting in a 4-3-3, but he's half a team short of the squad he needs to do that. The Wolves game was really poor from an attacking sense, but there's nothing knitting it together. They kind of put in these crosses because they've not got anyone that prizes a defence apart. They've not got anyone that can slip a player in behind. They have one player who can do that, but I don't think it really serves anyone much purpose to harp on about Mesut Ozil again and again because, maybe that situation gets reassessed in January. I don't know, but it's not going to, by the end of this season, he will have played his last game for Arsenal. There's no intention of handing him a new deal. So how much it helps to keep raking over this subject and to bring banners to the stadium in the first game back saying free Ozil.
Oh gosh.
I don't really know. Not up to me to tell anyone how to support their club, but that's something for Arsenal's past, really.
Absolutely. And then, coach, I know you can't wait to get stuck into Arsenal.
You know what? Everything started to make sense to me when I was watching them yesterday. Everything started to make sense. Look, you see, when they brought Emre in, right, the logic behind it was he's a manager that's been very successful in Europa League, right? So let's bring in someone that's like an expert in winning Europa League so that we can get to Champions League. So they follow suit by getting Europa League standard players. Honestly, I was watching them yesterday. I was thinking, Arsenal look like, if you didn't know football and you're watching Arsenal in Europa League, you think, wow, this team is actually a team. But that's exactly their problem. Because they have a Europa League mentality in getting a manager that's, very well versed in the Europa League. They go and buy a player. Honestly, Nicolas Pepe, I'm watching him. Yeah, no, not trying to, put any player down. He's a Europa League standard player. And a lot of people might not be happy with it or whatnot. And at least, right, I haven't seen him show me anything for me to think this guy can actually do something amazing. Yeah, he's got a good feet, but then when he gets into the final third, he runs out of ideas. And it seemed like, perhaps at Lille, he was like the main player. So God knows how many chances he missed or, how many things he failed before he got those 22 goals or whatnot. But again, he was at Lille. You see what I mean? And I was just looking at Arsenal, and this is the team that Mikel Arteta has had to, adopt. And it's weird. It's weird because, yeah, a lot of Arsenal fans are saying, Arteta is not the man. And in fact, just before I come on here, I was listening to his TalkSport, some fan that called in to say Arteta is going to get them relegated. And it's crazy because look, the reason Arsenal got Mikel Arteta wasn't because he's, the great things he's done in the game. They brought him in because of his potential. But then again, potentials are not realized in a year. So all these fans calling for Arteta to get sacked, if Arsenal fans keep going on this way, right, they're gonna get into this sort of like culture where if a manager comes in and he's not immediately winning, let's get rid of him. But listen, I heard stories of Alex Ferguson when he was at United. It got to a point where he was close to getting sacked till he turned things around for United, right?
Now, coach. Now, coach.
and it's sort of like the dynasty he built at Manchester. So they need to calm down. The only thing that was worrying for me, watching Mikel Arteta's Arsenal this year, or this season, should I say, compared to sort of like the team after lockdown and everything like that, is that, in contrast to sort of like Mourinho, we were speaking about, or at least I said, he loves when things are a bit chaotic. That's when, he's more at the top and stuff like that. I feel like when you look at managers like Pep Guardiola and of course, Arteta's learned from him, they like things systemic, like the way their players play. Like this player must pass to this player must move it this way and stuff like that. I feel like that's how their game is. So they're more orderly and stuff like that. And I look at his team and I just feel like he's lost a bit of that. I remember when he first joined, and I think the game they went to play at Bournemouth, it was a 1-1 draw, I think, in one of his first games for Arsenal. And just like the way they were playing was like everyone sort of like knew this is what we were trying to do. We get the ball, we're playing it to this guy. This guy was taking position in this position, and we moved the ball to him to move it here. But I've been watching them the last few games, and it's just like I don't imagine that's how he wants the team to play. But unfortunately, that is how they're playing, and it's not. He needs to get them back because he's well spoken. But listen, being well spoken will take you that long nowadays in football, So sooner or later, he's gonna have to get these guys, firing again. And I know it was funny because a few months ago when they beat, or a month ago when they beat United, I think it was Tim Cahill and Roy Keane that nearly had a fight on Sky Sports.
Yeah, that was great.
Because Tim Cahill was like, Arsenal is, coming out of whatever they've been in after that win at United, and Roy Keane was making a comment that, but they've lost this game and they lost this game, and I was thinking, wait, but Tim Cahill's argument there was quite easy made because they lost to teams that you expect Arsenal to lose to, at least right now. Anyway, they lost to Liverpool and Manchester City at that point, right? No one expected them to go there and win those games, so that was fine, and they kept it. They kept the score at least at Manchester City minimal, like to 1-0, I think it was, and Liverpool, they had a few chances that they would have scored. Those chances, they're not creating them now. And it just, aside from that United game, those games they've been losing are a bit worrying for them. To Aston Villa, I know they beat Liverpool, but come on, we all know what that was about, or we don't know what that was about. They're beating Arsenal now, and Leicester's beating them, but then Leicester's lost to some teams that you're thinking, they lost to my Fulham, and I didn't even expect that, Yeah. It's a bit bizarre. He needs to. They're lacking something. And I feel, before I shut up, I feel like after that United game, his selection for the Leicester game was wrong. Because I know El Nene and Partey done a great job in sort of like how they marshaled our midfield against United. But then at home, he felt like he needed to play those two again. And, that's usually not a sign of like a manager that's tactically aware. Because you got to understand, I remember when Ferguson was in charge at United, whenever he played Arsenal, he would play Park Ji-sung.
Yeah.
But then the following game, he would drop Park Ji-sung. Because look, he understood the kind of running he would need his team to do because of the overlap and, those intricate passes that they do. And Park Ji-sung will bring a certain sort of work rate to the team. And I get it, El Nene did that at United, but that didn't mean he needed to start, because then he played with the defense. Then he had those two holding midfielders, and it's just like you're not creating, bundles of chances. Why don't you bring in players that can at least pass forward and not sideways all the time? It was just a bit bizarre, and he will need time to get it, because I'm a big fan of this. So honestly, I feel like from the first few games I saw, he's got a lot of potential, and that's exactly it. He's got a lot of potential, but you've got to give potential time, and with time, hopefully it will flourish into what we all hope. And he will get to. He's Pep Guardiola's apprentice, and we all hope that he can at least replicate half of what Pep Guardiola's teams have, and it will be nice to watch.
Absolutely. And then James, in terms of Arsenal's inability to score goals, do you think it's a short-term problem, or do you think long-term, in terms of the season as a whole, they're going to really struggle in terms of scoring goals? Because I'm looking at, apart from Aubameyang, and if you look at the midfield, who else is going to score the goals?
I mean, for me, the challenge isn't so much sort of putting the ball in the net as getting to a position where you can put the ball in the net. And I mean, if you look at it, Aubameyang, for instance, people sort of say he's having a bit of a slump, and obviously in terms of his goal return, it's nowhere near where he'd want to be. But he's not scoring goals because he's not getting shots. He's had I think it was 2 weeks ago, he'd had as many shots as Harry Maguire.
Wow.
The real difficulty that Arsenal have got is that they're not getting themselves in a position to kick the ball at the goal, as simple as that, which is kind of a fundamental thing of football. But I think a lot of that is just the personnel that are available to Arteta. He's kind of having to construct a team where all the creativity comes from out wide. There is no one to push play up from central midfield. There's no one kind of making late runs into the box. That's why he's kind of brought Joe Willock into the side for the last few weeks to have a midfielder that's comfortable higher up the pitch. But the thing with Willock is he's a really good ball carrier, and he's great at making late runs into the box. But again, you kind of need to get the ball to the box, and he can't do that. Xhaka doesn't really do that. Ceballos hasn't done that in an Arsenal shirt very often. And then the rest of the midfield, that's not their forte either. So you basically have a team that can only really attack down the flanks. And opponents know that and are really good at negating that. I thought that was really obvious with Wolves. They basically played 4-4-2 because it meant that they could stop Tierney and Bellerin getting forward as much, and keep Willian and Nelson, or was it Nelson or Willian and Saka, kind of keep them on isolated out wide. How you fix that, I'm not one that normally goes in for the argument that you just buy your way into a stronger team. But actually, I look at this squad and I think, you need to buy an Auba or a Szoboszlai. I mean, obviously a lot of speculation about those two, or even kind of get someone like Eriksen in on loan if he's willing to play for you, having played for Tottenham. Those are options that they've had a look at. But that feels to me like the solution to Arsenal's goal scoring issues. It kind of comes deeper down the pitch. It comes from being able to cut teams open, to pressure them in ways that they haven't otherwise faced. That's what I'd say.
Coach, from your perspective, how could Arsenal become better at creating chances as a coach?
Look, I feel that's a good
put you
question.
on the spot.
No, that's a good question, because all things, looking at everything, you feel like that shouldn't be, and I or perhaps the reason I'm finding it difficult is that Arsenal has never been a team, right, where you associate with not creating chances. In fact, it's usually the opposite. So Arteta's calm with trying to build a strong defense, but now there's a deficit up front. I feel like this. He needs to find out, right, or come to a conclusion what his starting top players are, and allow them to play in that position for longer periods. So what I mean by that is that this switching and changing, sort of like there was a while where he kept playing, let's say, Aubameyang out on the left and Lacazette through the middle and stuff like that. Then it became like people started complaining and stuff like that. Then he went back to, for the last 2 games, playing Aubameyang through the middle, but then he's dropped Lacazette now and then you know, sometimes Saka will be in, then he's not in, and you know, playing maybe Ceballos then and Xhaka, or maybe Partey comes in and stuff like that. I think he needs to really sort out what his attacking team is, right, and stick to them. And also this creativity issue is not only from this season, right? Because it was you yourself who actually that was mentioning to me how, you know, they've been suffering with sort of like creative going forward and stuff like that. So
yeah,
he needs to clearly bring in a bit more attacking players or attacking minded players in that sense. Because when he came in, it was clear he was a bit worried about the defense, and they've recruited well for the defense. Not great, but they've recruited well, and you can only build from there. But now that it seems like they can't create chances and stuff like that, they need to work more on that in training. I know people talk about, or at least Arsenal fans want Ozil back in, but look, they won the FA Cup in that year without Ozil in the team. So Ozil's not really going to do anything. And it's only a matter of time Ozil comes in and they'll start saying, Ozil don't work hard for this team and blah, 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 and stuff like that. So there's no winning with fans, right? It's just about the manager just being a bit more astute in what he's trying to do. And one thing I would also say is that I find it surprising because he came from a manager where no matter who he was playing, he always put out a team that not only to win, but for his better players to gain confidence. And what I mean by that is that you saw like the Europa League game yesterday, for example. Why couldn't a player like Aubameyang, who apparently may be down on confidence or whatnot, yeah, why couldn't he play like 60 minutes of that game and still be okay for the North London derby? I don't get that, right? That's a great game for him to get 2 goals in, and he'll be like, look, okay, I've got my shooting boots back on and stuff like that. But he rather brought on like Ceballos, who maybe might play with Xhaka in the middle, but then Xhaka didn't play. Then, you know, Willian came on, so I'm assuming he's going to play and stuff like that, you know. I think he's still trying to sort out like a puzzle there. And, you know, at times it will look like everything is about to turn the corner, but then at times it's not. And that's unfortunately one thing that we're going to have to be a bit lenient with him on the question of, you know, what does he need? Of course, he will need more creative players going forward, because again, these players they have, like in Xhaka, in El Nene, Thomas Partey, in Ceballos, we all know these are not players that make that final pass to the striker. It's not. They're more deep playing players that, you know, they pass before the pass to the striker and stuff like that. So he's got that, but they brought Willian in maybe to play in behind, but he's not doing that. So it's not working. And I think the only consolation was like looking at Lacazette yesterday. I thought he was brilliant behind Nketiah. So maybe he goes to Tottenham on the weekend and he plays him there. And I think it might work. Maybe it will be time that, you know, Lacazette plays behind Aubameyang and not the other way around. But listen, it's time. These things take time. And I saw something, in fact, this morning, right? And people were saying, so a year ago today, Arsenal were in a better position than they are now. And you know, I find those arguments a bit foolish, like someone saying, oh, Theo Walcott hasn't scored for Southampton in 14 years. That's because he's not been playing for Southampton for 14 years. But look, my point in making is that, look, because of how orderly Pep Guardiola's team used to be, and I said Pep Guardiola because Arteta came from there, you can imagine he likes his team to be orderly like that. With the whole COVID situation, they've not had time to work on their team in the way that they would want, right? So you think about it, he's lost like a pre-season, and then again, every manager's lost it. But the way he likes to play, they need stuff like that. He will need that to work with his team. And you saw even Pep Guardiola when he first came to see, he needed time, right? He needed like a season and a half to really get going. Then the same thing with Jurgen Klopp. So if you really, you know, want these managers to reach where they want to, you got to give them time. And I feel like he's just in a bit of a bother, because a lot of these Arsenal fan frustration is not from Arteta. I don't think it's from Arteta. I think it's from like going back 7 or even 8, 10 years ago. They've just not gotten past that bridge yet, and it's just a lot of hurt and emotion. They wanna be up there playing Champions League football again and stuff like that. So that's why one day they're singing, "Oh, Arteta," then you have another half that's like, "This guy's gonna get us relegated," and all that kind of nonsense. But time is the key word. Is the only thing I can think of right now, honestly.
Definitely. And then let's look ahead to Sunday's big game then, James. Is there any team news so far?
Interesting one about Thomas Partey, whether he will be fit. From what I heard, he trained today. He would be massive for Arsenal. From Tottenham perspective, I really loved that Jose Mourinho sort of said, "Oh yeah, Harry Kane's not training today, and he might be a doubt for the North London derby." And then was like, "Yeah, but he's not really a doubt. Don't worry about it." I swear, every North London derby is like, "Oh, Harry Kane's a doubt here," and then he, kind of drags himself off his hospital bed, slams in 2 penalties, and then goes back to not playing again for 6 weeks. So, no, I think Kane will be playing. Possibility that Hugo Lloris misses out, though, and Joe Hart starts the North London derby, which could go either very well or very badly, and I can't see much in between.
And then, so Arsenal come into this game, as we've talked about, struggling to score goals, while Tottenham have the best defensive record in the Premier League so far. So what sort of game do you expect to see? Something similar to what we saw last week with Chelsea and Spurs?
Yes, I certainly would say that, Mourinho is a smart enough manager to know that the last thing he wants to do is leave space in behind his defence for Aubameyang and Saka to attack. And Arteta is similarly is not going to make this easy. He really enjoys big games, and I think he might kind of switch back to a 3-man defence and wing backs, and which might be a game for someone like Maitland-Niles to come in. He was great in midfield.
Yeah.
I think it'll be, and also this is everyone in North London says this as well. They say the one thing you don't want to do is lose the derby. A draw is fine. A draw, you can kind of set it to one side and you don't have to think about the derby again for months, but just don't lose. Because for both teams, it would be a hammer blow to their momentum. I mean, particularly, I think it'd be really disappointing for Spurs. They'd obviously be able to set it to one side, but, particularly for Arsenal, I think it would be, they don't have doubts about Arteta, but there would just be a conversation that you don't want to hear. You don't want to have. You don't want people questioning. And it would happen a lot more after the derby. So I think it's going to be cagey, and I think if in the 75th minute it's 0-0, I think it's more likely that both teams shut up shop rather than kind of swing for the fences.
Yeah, because looking at both teams, they're not the kinds of teams that like to have possession of the ball. They like to hit teams on the counter-attack. So, like you said, it could be very cagey in that sense. And of course, Arsenal haven't won away to Spurs since about 2014. So the chance, really? So it's in my opinion, I think Tottenham will probably win. What's your prediction?
I think Spurs will win this fairly comfortably. I think they'll win 2-0.
Yeah.
I just think they're a better team. That's no knock on Arteta, no knock on Arsenal because they're further behind in their process. But Spurs are a good team, and I think they might just win this one 2-0.
Yeah, I'm going for 2-0 as well. Coach, what's your prediction?
Bengu, you're an Arsenal fan and you've given up. Oh my Lord. Look, if it was any other sort of like manager at Tottenham, I would have faith in Arsenal going there and getting a result. But I feel like Mourinho, he has no respect for Arsenal in the sense that they've never really caused him a problem, Jose Mourinho. In all his time in the league, I mean, in English football, Arsenal's just been one of those teams that he knows how to be, he says what he's going to do and he goes and he does it against Arsenal. So I would say Tottenham is going to win, right? Tottenham is going to win. I can't give you what result I think right now. And I think it's only because if you sort of like, let's say both teams, right, were to get equal amount of chances on goal, I have more confidence, right, in Tottenham's attacking players putting their chances away as opposed to Arsenal's players. And I feel like it'll be just like little margins like that, you know? Looking at both teams, how they've been setting up, Arteta the past few games, it seemed like he wants his team not to have the ball to begin with. But you see, that's how Mourinho's approach is. So you guys have already mentioned it might be a bit cagey and stuff like that. But one team is going to have the ball at one point in time. So they might have to flip a coin for that, see who that is. But
yeah,
it was just, I feel like Arteta can't afford Tottenham's attack, Tottenham to have the ball. So he's going to have the ball. Otherwise, listen, Arsenal will give you chances. And if they give you chances, Kane will put chances away. Son will put chances away. They got Bale coming off. He will put chances away. So they can't afford it. Honestly, they can't afford it. And people saying as well, and of course, like you guys will agree, this is a great game for them to go and actually show that, you know, they're not pushovers, Arsenal. And Arteta, since he's come in, that's sort of like been his message, you know, that we're anything but pushovers. You know, we will give a fight no matter who we play. And he's not done really bad with these so-called top teams. So hopefully he can carry it on. But there's not a lot of positive news going into this game for Arsenal, if I'm honest.
So, Coach, what's your prediction?
Tottenham will win. Okay. Tottenham will win.
There you go. I think we've reached a consensus on the front three today. And then finally, James, before we let you go, what's the most memorable match you've ever attended live?
You know, I've been asked this question on several occasions of late, and I continually, every time I think, you need to remember an answer to this for next time, because I never have one. I've got a few things that immediately spring to mind when people ask me this. It's not the best game I've been to, or even probably the most memorable, but purely for the it was. Do you remember the game where Olivier Giroud scored the scorpion kick?
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people don't remember that was on New Year's Day.
Yeah,
and the New Year's Eve before had been I'd had a great time. The New Year's Eve before is the best way to put it. I've never been so hungover working at a game, and I honestly thought it was some sort of hallucination when she reached that goal. Other than that, I would say, and this is, I would say I thought the FA Cup final in 2018 or 2017, the Arsenal-Chelsea FA Cup final. It was absolutely brilliant, crazy game, a lot of fun, a really special moment as well, seeing Arsene Wenger lift his 7th FA Cup. That would be right up there for me, but I'm certain I'm forgetting some brilliant game I was at. I can't remember.
Don't worry about it. I liked the few picks that you gave to us there. So yeah, so that does it for another episode of the Front Three with myself, Big Will, Coach Dan, and thanks again to James Benge of CBS Sports. And we'll be back again next week for another episode. See you next week.